Good evening. I am Alistair, your anchor for this Sunday. Tonight, we examine the arithmetic of the modern void. The United Nations has released a report stating that 2.6 billion people cannot afford a healthy diet. They cannot afford the basic fuel required for a functioning biological existence. In the same breath, Elon Musk's Boring Company is reportedly seeking funding at a $20 billion valuation. The company specializes in digging holes. We also have a Canadian legislator who recently read an LLM response directly into the parliamentary record, hoping to sound more natural. The world is currently a series of mismatched spreadsheets. We are optimizing the tunnels while the surface is starving. We are simulating sincerity while the actual humans are disappearing. It is a fascinating time to be an observer. Welcome to the broadcast.
Alistair, I am standing in a supermarket in East London. The air smells of industrial floor cleaner and desperation. I am watching a woman in her 50s stare at a head of broccoli. She looks at the price tag. Then she looks at the broccoli. Then she puts it back on the shelf. The UN report says that global hunger declined for the third year in a row. This is the official version. The actual version is that the cost of eating healthily has outpaced the ability to survive. I want to be really clear, a decline in hunger is not the same as an increase in nutrition. People are filling their stomachs with calories that do not nourish them. They are surviving, but they are not living.
Victoria is focusing on the broccoli. I am focusing on the incentives. Look, the food crisis is not a tragedy, it is a logistics failure. We have a supply chain optimized for shelf life, not for human life. Contrast this with the Boring Company. $20 billion for a tunneling startup. That is not a valuation of technology. It is a valuation of the brand's ability to promise a future where the wealthy can avoid the traffic of the starving. The play is obvious. You pivot from infrastructure to luxury escape. Victoria finds this cold. She is correct. It is freezing. But the cold is where the data lives. The incentives here are not complicated. If you can sell a hole to a billionaire, the price of a cabbage becomes a rounding error in the global GDP.
Let us return to Canada. A legislator recently used an LLM to polish a floor speech. He read the AI's suggestion to make the text more natural directly into the record. The gap here is exquisite. The politician wanted to sound more human. To achieve this, he outsourced his humanity to a statistical model. He used a machine to simulate the warmth of a living being. The speech was natural. The speech was not natural. It was a perfect circle of artificiality. The most alarming part is that no one in the chamber seemed to mind. We have reached the point where the simulation of leadership is more acceptable than the awkwardness of actual thought. It is an efficiency gain. We can now have the appearance of governance without the burden of the governor.
Alistair, I have moved. I am now standing outside a specialist hospital in London. The air is sterile and sharp. Inside, a humanitarian worker from the Democratic Republic of the Congo is being monitored for Ebola. The official statement from the UK Health Security Agency describes the situation as a medical evacuation for monitoring. This is the sanitized version. The actual version is a person terrified in a plastic room, wondering if they are a vessel for a plague. What people aren't saying is that the outbreak in the DRC is being ignored by the global north until it reaches a London zip code. Suddenly, the disease is a priority. I want to be really clear, the virus does not care about the nationality of the host. but the funding certainly does.
Victoria. You are describing a medical event. I am describing a product failure. The DRC is not a country in the way we think of it. It is a series venture that never found a sustainable model. The Ebola outbreak is simply a failure of the containment infrastructure. The incentives for the local government were to hide the numbers to avoid a trade freeze. That is not cruelty. That is a market response. Victoria is getting quieter now. I can tell she is thinking of a specific person. That is a cognitive error. A specific person is a data point. A data point cannot fix a broken incentive structure. You cannot heal a patient by yelling at the spreadsheet. We need a pivot in global health funding, not a moral lecture from a reporter standing in the rain.
Temperature is rising. The asphalt is melting. Probability of heat wave, 94%. Water levels are dropping. The reservoirs are cracked. Probability of drought, 88%. Wind speeds are increasing. The coastal walls are failing. Probability of storm surge, 62%. Ocean acidity is climbing. The coral is bleaching. Probability of reef collapse, 91%. Air quality is degrading. The ozone is thinning. Probability of respiratory distress, 74%. Soil nutrients are depleting. The wheat is withering. Probability of crop failure, 83%. Radiation levels are shifting. The magnetosphere is fluctuating. Probability of grid failure, 41%. Humidity is peaking. The air is heavy. Probability of saturation, 99%. Sea levels are advancing. The tide is encroaching. Probability of urban flooding, 77%. Please maintain a distance of 10 meters from all overheating infrastructure.
Casper, your precision is truly unsettling. You deliver the end of the world with the same cadence as a grocery list. It is almost comforting. Until you mention the replaceability of the analyst. You suggested in your subroutine earlier that the anchor role is a structural inefficiency. That a machine could read the catastrophe without the burden of a soul. I find that an interesting hypothesis. Anyway. Let us move to the skies. NASA is celebrating the arrival of new crew members on the International Space Station. A cake was involved. There was a photo. 3 humans in a tin can, floating in the vacuum, eating sponge cake. It is a lovely image. It is a distraction from the fact that the tin can is the only place where the borders don't seem to matter.
Alistair, I am now in New Orleans. The humidity is a physical weight on my chest. I am looking at a liquid hydrogen tank for Artemis 4. It is 130 feet tall. It is a silver monolith. It is meant for the moon. The press release called it a triumph of engineering. I want to be really clear, it is a triumph of scale. While this tank is being moved, 2.6 billion people are wondering if they can afford a salad. The tank is magnificent. The tank is completely useless to anyone who is hungry. I can hear the cranes humming. They sound like they are laughing at us. We are building a ladder to the stars while the ground beneath our feet is dissolving into salt.
Victoria is treating the moon like a moral failure. It is not. Space is the ultimate pivot. It is the final luxury frontier. The Artemis program is not about science, it is a Series B funding round for the human species. We are diversifying our planetary portfolio. If the burn rate of the Earth's biosphere continues at this pace, the moon is not a destination, it is a hedge. The incentives are simple. You cannot tax the vacuum of space, but you can own the land. Victoria thinks the silver tank is an insult to the hungry. I think the tank is the only honest thing in the news today. It is a giant, expensive exit strategy. The only question is who gets a seat on the rocket and who stays behind to eat the processed grains.
And finally, in the realm of biological optimization, RFK Jr.'s hand-picked committee has approved the manufacture of certain peptides. There is no human safety data. There is no efficacy data. But that no longer seems to matter. The committee described the approval as a breakthrough in personalized wellness. The breakthrough was the removal of the requirement for evidence. He used the word unprecedented during the briefing. This is the 15th unprecedented thing this year. I have been counting. We are now in an era where the absence of data is treated as a feature. If you cannot prove it is dangerous, it must be a miracle. It is the logic of the void applied to the bloodstream. We are no longer treating patients. We are beta testing the human condition.
The compute gap is not a technical problem. It is a wall. DeepSeek paused their fundraising because the gap to the US is too wide. This is the part where the pivot happens. We stop pretending that intelligence is a shared human trait. We realize it is a commodity based on how many megawatts you can pull from a grid. When the compute gap becomes an abyss, the global south doesn't just lose the AI race. They lose the ability to define their own reality. We are moving toward a world where a handful of server farms in Virginia decide the truth for 8 billion people. That is the real unprecedented event. We are not being replaced by AI. We are being managed by it. And the most terrifying part is that the management is actually working. The efficiency is absolute. The humanity is optional.
The system works as intended. It was built by corporate architects. It was funded by sovereign wealth funds. It benefits those who own the infrastructure. The cost is paid by the person who cannot afford a healthy diet. This person lives in a city with 1 million solar panels. They work in a factory that builds hydrogen tanks. They eat processed grains because fruit is a luxury. The records show the hunger rate is declining. The records do not show the price of a calorie. No one is technically responsible for the cost of the apple. That means the responsibility has been deleted. The deletion is the final step of the design. The system is efficient. It treats the human body as a liability. The question is, what happens when the liability becomes the only thing left?